Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I'm giving Spider-Man a second chance today. And I have some good things to say, and I have some bad things to say about his uniform. Now, to be clear, I'm still not going to tier 3 him, and to be clear, I am generally focusing on his value for PvP, because I haven't really heard much of anything for his PvE potential, but I have heard some positive things about his PvP potential, and I can say that at least with his stealth suit, he does have some promise in PvP, particularly with his Spider Trap 5th skill. And upon further inspection and upon testing it out more, I think I have a better idea of what the developers were trying to do when they made this skill. And they really were trying to capture the essence of him being stealth mode. And now, if you've seen Far From Home, I don't know if they obviously didn't take anything from the movie because they didn't see the movie before they made this uniform, so it won't really feel like the movie that much, but it will very much feel like a stealth uniform, and it has some inherent weaknesses that it tries to cover up itself. It's kind of an interesting skill. It's actually a lot more interesting than I originally gave it credit for. I did give it a lot of flack, a lot of shit, because it's a 20-second cooldown, which is garbage for PvP. 10 seconds is just way too long, but it has some niche synergy. Now, I don't know, and I don't honestly think that the niche synergy works right now in Marvel Future Fight, but it's possible that it will work in the future when Captain Marvel gets a rework or some sort of nerf, or if she falls out of the meta for some reason, or if something else happens to Spider-Man. I don't know. But right now, I think the biggest challenge to Spider-Man's Spider Trap actually working, and you'll see from the clips that I'm going to try to show for you, it's really Captain Marvel, and it's debuff in general. Now, I don't think that Netmarble can really fix this by giving Spider-Man a web that ignores debuff. Now, Fracture already ignores debuff, and he has Fracture on multiple skills, so they can't really do that. It would be too OP for him to have webbing that ignored iframe or ignored debuff, because then you could only hide during iframes. So it's kind of awkward. I don't know exactly how they can make Spider-Man a competitive character without the webbing. The webbing is really what makes him who he is. I think they could, if they wanted to, for example, if Netmarble were listening, they could create a new mechanic where certain skills of Spider-Man's, when they apply webbing, if there's a debuff present, like a debuff leadership, the webbing will be removed immediately, but the webbing will reduce the debuff duration by 1 second. So you're basically getting to the end of the debuff timer faster every time you web up the enemy. So it's kind of like, picture, you know, an enemy, like let's say Dr. Octopus is fighting Spider-Man, and he's able to knock the webbing away with his tentacles. But as Spider-Man webs more and more and more, the webbing starts to accumulate on the tentacles, and they start to get weighed down, they start to slow down or whatever, and then eventually Spider-Man will be able to overwhelm Dr. Octopus with webbing. Now, of course, in the meantime, Spider-Man could die by getting his iframes interrupted by the enemy that they're fighting, that he's fighting, or, you know, something else happening. But that would be one way of sort of creating a bit more of an interesting counterplay, because right now, without debuff, webbing is super OP. You can completely obliterate an entire team with Spider-Man if you don't have debuff, and that's why I think a lot of new players are so you know, enamored, and they think Spider-Man's so strong and sexy because he just dominates the whole team and they can never move, and you just press all your skills and that's it. You don't even have to press them in the right order. Just press the skills one at a time. Just put a little bit of space in between each skill, and they're going to be webbed up. Every skill has webbing pretty much, except for 3. But then when you have debuff for veterans, that's pretty much a must. Spider-Man's kind of trash. Not trash, but just not nearly as good as a lot of these other characters, because he doesn't have the tankiness, he doesn't have the dodge of Ant-Man, and he doesn't have the damage to one-shot. So what does he have? And so, for example, to give you some stats, so it's 12 seconds of debuff removal, continuous debuff removal with a cooldown of 20 seconds. So let's say you trigger that at the beginning of the fight. So from 4 minutes and 59 seconds down to 4 minutes and 47 seconds, you'll have debuff. But let's say this new mechanic was in place and you web them up 3 times, it would remove 3 seconds. So you would get to that debuff ending 3 seconds faster. So instead of getting to the debuff turning off at 4 minutes and 47 seconds, you would get there at 4 minutes 50 seconds. So you'd only have 8 seconds of debuff, or 9 seconds roughly, rounded up or rounded down, rather than the full 12. And then you'd still have that 8-second gap from 12 seconds to 20 seconds, because that's when the cooldown ends. You'd still have that 8-second gap to actually web them. So even with debuff leaderships, you can web up your enemy. It's just you gotta survive until then, which is actually really difficult. So I want to do a couple of different fights here with Spider-Man, so I can show you guys what I'm talking about, and I want to show you guys what I think his 5th skill was designed to do. So we're going to start off against this team. This team, in particular for Spider-Man that I've designed, I think is one of the best, because he needs the damage in order to kill Thanos and other like super hard hitters, super tanky characters. So that's why Nick Fury is there. Nick Fury is also going to give him some other bonuses from the tier 2 passive, and then Victorious is there for the 30% max HP to make Spider-Man tankier. You could also, instead of Victorious, if you wanted, you could put in someone like Volstagg for the all damage reduction, or if you were seeing Ant-Mans and stuff like that, you might want to throw in some Ignore Dodge. Alternatively, for his build, the only thing I would change, and I'll just quickly show you my build one more time because it's quite good for PvP. It's 8 HPs, 8 physical attack, Uru, and then we've got some ignore defense and some attack speed to cap. I do think Spider-Man needs max attack speed, and I'll tell you why. It surrounds his 5th skill. It's basically the only skill you want to use, but he also has max dodge. And so you could also build him with a slightly different team if you wanted to go a slightly different route. I would say the only other CTP that I would put on him for PvP other than Destruction, although I think he doesn't need the Destruction for the penetration, is Refinement. I do think Refinement has a possibility of being a good uniform or a good CTP for Spider-Man. As far as obelisks go, I don't know whether I would recommend any of them. I don't know if he can do well enough with them to really be, you know, a strong enough character for PvP. But we're gonna go ahead now and we're just gonna stall out. We want to stall out so that we can get Spider-Man's 5th skill ready. That's really all we're trying to do. Now, this is kind of a lucky team because we're setting it up. Oh, don't die, dude. We're setting it up so that Spider-Man might be able to use his 5th skill right away. Okay, so we got the 5th skill off. The problem here is that we killed Jean Grey too quickly. And we killed Jean Grey too quickly, which means that we don't have enough time to do the 5th skill again. So while the damage on the 5th skill was good, we killed Jean Grey too fast. And this is where the design of Spider-Man's 5th skill is good, but the actual gameplay is bad. The strength of Spider-Man's 5th skill is that when you get to the end of the skill, even if you don't kill the character, and actually especially if you don't kill the character, the enemy, then you can do it again. Now, it's risky. You may want to make the team slightly weaker in order to make him weaker, but it seems weird to make Spider-Man weaker in order to get the synergy of his 5th skill off. It sounds weird, but I know that some of you are going to suggest it in the comments, so I just want to make that clear that I've considered that, but when you say it out loud, it's pretty weird. I'm going to make Spider-Man weaker so that I can get the 5th skill synergy. Like, you're going through a lot of work, you're doing a lot of mental gymnastics just to make Spider-Man work. Listen, he just doesn't work. Let's just accept that, if that's the case. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying if that's the case. But we're going to try to stall out here until we can get his 5th skill off. Now, it's good because we have the webbing, because he doesn't have a debuff lead. So we're going to be able to get this synergy off against Thanos. Oh, we're not going to be able to get it off against Thanos. Thanos died too quickly again. So this is part of the problem. But essentially, if you're able to get to the end of the 5th skill, which I have not yet been able to do, Spider-Man gains 5 seconds of invisibility. And when he's invisible, he can't be targeted. It's difficult for me to find a PvP team that works. Basically, if you kill them too fast, you don't get the invisibility. If you don't get the invisibility on Spider-Man's 5th skill, you can't continue to spam Spider-Man's 5th skill. And the damage and the length of iframe on 1 and 3 and 4 are not good enough to use you know, in between to stall out either. Whereas someone like Ant-Man has a really nice priority iframe on 4, and it's a long iframe, so it lets him stall in between 4 and 5, and you can chain those iframes together successfully. Spider-Man can't really chain his iframes together successfully. At least I don't have a lot of success with it, even with 129.8% max attack speed. I'm pretty much there at max attack speed, and I cannot get Spider-Man to interrupt and get his like, look right there, he couldn't interrupt Jean Grey. He's got low priority iframes, and so he can't actually get it. But I'm going to keep trying until we can actually show off a fight where he can do the 5th skill chaining, because it's actually very cool. And I think it really does capture the essence of him being a stealth Spider-Man. It's just that the application is so rare. You know, most of the time you're just not going to get the chance to use it. So then what's the point, basically? We're going to try against this Dr. Doom. Let's see if this works. I don't really know. I got it to work against a team that I can't seem to find anymore with Jean Grey and Deadpool. But we're going to see if we can basically stall out. We want to stall out for 10 seconds so that we can immediately use... We'll let her die, actually, because she's going to die here. So we can immediately use Spider-Man's 5th skill to... Well, there we go. Okay. So we're going to use his 5th skill, and we're going to kill Dr. Doom, and we're going to get 5 seconds of invisibility. So here's the good part. We get 5 seconds of invisibility, and we can go right back into the 5th skill. And this is the beautiful part. We killed him in the second half, so we can't actually do that. Okay, so let's just see if we can manage to make something else of this. The other problem with Spider-Man's 5th skill is that there is a gap. God damn it. There's a gap at the beginning. This is why there's mistakes, or there's kind of a lack of awareness to how it's actually going to play out in game. I'm pretty sure that Spider-Man's stealth suit was made for PvP. The problem is, I mean, the balancing, the thing that makes his 5th skill balanced, and the thing that makes his 5th skill actually, you know, make sense, is that there's a lack of iframe at the very beginning. It's not an instantaneous iframe. If you watch when I press, there's a gap right there. He webs up, and then he goes into this long, like 7-second iframe. And then he gets 5 seconds of invisibility on top of that, and then you can do it again. And so because of the 5 seconds of invisibility at the end of an iframe that's about 5 or 6 seconds long, you have way more than enough time until the next 5th skill is ready. So that 10 seconds of cooldown doesn't matter, but you have to get the full skill effect. If you kill the enemy too soon, or if for some reason they interrupt you at the beginning when you're going into that iframe, and that's why I said he needs max attack speed, because you have to get into that iframe ASAP. If you don't get into that iframe fast enough, you're screwed. So, you know, if you don't get into the iframe fast enough, or if you kill the enemy too soon, then you can't do anything. And so maybe this Spider-Man uniform would be good, for example, against Wolverine. That would probably be a niche situation in which I could see it working, because Wolverine has few iframes. He only has basically 2.5, and Wolverine is a character that's traditionally Spider-Man can't kill, but if he has enough time, and see, I got interrupted. I got my iframe interrupted by hers, so it's not even a priority iframe when he's in the iframe. But because Spider-Man has traditionally had a really hard time killing Wolverine, but Wolverine has few iframes to ignore or interrupt Spider-Man, you could possibly, and you know, shit luck here because I'm not going to find anyone who's actually using Wolverine in timeline battle, but you could possibly chain his 5th skill iframe, his new stealth suit 5th skill against a Wolverine, and you could kill him. I think you could, because you could apply fracture on the 5th skill, and you could basically continuously cast it. Once you trap an enemy, one-on-one enemy in that skill, there's nothing they can do about it, because you get 5 seconds of invisibility. I mean, maybe there's something they can do about it, but I haven't yet seen it. When it works, it works. The problem is, 80% of the time it doesn't work. You either kill them too fast and then you can't do it again. In the case of Jean Grey and Dr. Doom and other characters that revive, they revive faster than your 5th skill comes off cooldown, and then you can't cast it again, so then you die. And you can't stall with 1 and 3 and 4 because the iframes aren't priority. Or you kill them, which is great, sure, you kill them, and then the next character comes out and they kill you basically instantaneously, especially if it's Captain Marvel. Now, the other really cool thing about Spider Trap is at the very end of the skill, it leaves these landmines down, these little red lights with a beam going around them, and those lights will explode a few seconds later, and they will trigger webbing. Now, this is really, really cool because, again, it's almost impossible for me to show you in PvP in an actual fight, but see, they're right there. In PvP, you can actually, if you time it correctly, you can kill the character, and then when the next character spawns, they will explode and web them up. Again, super cool idea, Netmarble. I really applaud you for being so creative, but listen, take an hour, go on your lunch break, actually play the game. Don't play on your test server where there are no PvP teams. Play on a real live server Well, I guess you can't if it's not before the update. But after the update, play on a real live server, or just get more people on your test server to play PvP and see that these skills, while they work in theory, they work on the whiteboard, they don't work in game. So I'm not really sure what to say about Spider-Man at this point. He has promise, he has potential. I don't know, maybe he's good in Alliance Conquest. He has some limited function in Alliance Tournament, but I don't think it's going to be long-term personally. And yeah, that's pretty much my second take at Spider-Man. I will do a third take for PvE if you guys really want, but honestly, I haven't heard much, and I imagine that he's pretty bad in PvE and like World Boss and stuff, unless you tier 3 him. I think tier 3ing him is the bare minimum with the stealth suit, so you can get that all defense down. That actually applies to world bosses, and you can make something out of him. But even then, why make something out of him when you can just take a tier 2 Molten Man with a fire damage obelisk and get the same result in PvE? Sorry guys, I wish I had more nice things to say about Spider-Man. There is a lot of potential here, and I like the creativity, but then the execution is very, very flawed. So hit me up in the comments, let me know what you think. Subscribe if you enjoy the content, you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you later today. Take care.